All right. Oh my goodness, guys. I am so excited tonight. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, educator, author, entrepreneur, and speaker, and I am the host and creator of Leadership Matters. And when I tell you we have a dynamic guest tonight, I'm just so excited, I tell you. So let me tell you just a little bit about my fabulous guest for tonight. Dr. Michael J. Hynes. He is superintendent of schools on Long Island. He is an educator. He's a scholar. He is a public school advocate, and that's one of the things that caught my attention to him. He is an advocate and emphasizes whole child, educating the whole child, and I love that. He is a graduate of Bethany College. That's where he got his undergraduate degree. He received his doctorate in education administration from Dowling College. He was awarded the Friend of Education Award and the Distinguished Leadership Award from Phi Delta Kappa. And when I tell you, I'm excited. I follow him on all of his social media outlets, and I just could not be more pleased to welcome to Leadership Matters, Dr. Michael J. Hynes. Welcome, Dr. Hynes.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sharon. This is unbelievable. Do I call you Dr. Sharon or Dr. Porter?
Dr. Sharon. I love Dr. Sharon.
I love Dr. Sharon too, very much. It really is. It's an absolute honor to join you. So thank you.
Absolutely. And so, guys, I had the opportunity of just giving you some brief tidbits of his background, but now I would love, Dr. Hynes, for you to give the viewers and the listeners just a little more in depth of who Dr. Michael Hynes really is.
Sure. It's interesting. I always say the fact that I'm a public school superintendent is the ultimate irony, because as a student, and that's one thing we all have in common, we all went to school at some point, whether it's in the public or private school. I actually graduated in the bottom 10% of my class in high school. And not because I'd like to think cognitively I was able to do well, but I became very disenfranchised once I hit the high school level. So for me, I'll tell you briefly that I used to love elementary school as a student. Back then we had junior highs. Junior highs, I started to become, disenfranchised. High school guidance counselor said I wasn't going to make it, which, gave me a lot of fuel to the fire to do well in school. And now here I am as a school superintendent. I have 5 children, ages 16 to 2 years old. So Piaget, for those of us who know who Piaget is, they're in all 4 stages of developmental growth. My wife is an assistant superintendent on Long Island as well for curriculum and instruction. And I can't think of more of a calling than leading in a school district that is as dynamic as ours. The school district I'm on, or I work for on Long Island in Patchogue, Medford, is a microcosm of New York State. It's extremely diverse as far as, I will say, socioeconomically, racially, religiously. I mean, every facet you could think of. It's what is our strength in our school district. And one of the things I think that we do differently is that we do celebrate the whole child. We don't just focus on test scores. That to me is, part of the reason why we're in school, but it's certainly not the reason why. And I think we're doing some very interesting and innovative things in school that are counterintuitive to what most public schools are doing. And so hopefully I can talk about some of those things. But, like I said, the fact that I'm here speaking with you and being a school superintendent is it's a blessing, but it is an exhausting job.
I can only imagine. And what really caught my attention to your work was really your emphasis on the need for recess.
Yes.
And I tell you, when I start reading your articles, when I saw your TEDx talk, I was like, wow. And I just got engrossed at that point. And so I really, we've got to talk about the P's, that, because that's what it's all about. That was what captured me. And so I want you to talk about the physical growth, the emotional growth, the academic growth, and the social growth. But of course, I want to start with the physical, because what was so amazing to me is that you practically doubled the amount of time that your students have for recess from 20 minutes to 40 minutes. That's huge. I want you to talk to me a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah, gladly. It's, it's interesting. Recess, for some reason or another, in the United States, in all 50 states, only 8 states are mandated to have recess in school, which to me is clinically insane. And actually, I think it's criminal, to be honest with you. And in most school systems, traditionally, you have 40 minutes. You have 20 minutes for lunch, and you have 20 minutes for recess. We all know kids eat as quick as they can so they can go outside and go play. In New York State, believe it or not, we have some school districts that have no recess, some that have 10 minutes, and 0 that have 40 minutes. So one of the things that we did that was major, because you talked about the physical growth, the emotional, social growth, and academic growth, we have 40 minutes for lunch and 40 minutes for recess, so which is actually unheard of. But we believe that time for kids to, we tell kids what to do all day long, from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed. So that lunchtime is sacred time for them to just be and to hang out with their friends and to connect in ways that they can't do in the classroom. But the doubling of recess, I thought more parents or more people would push back. And it wasn't as many as I thought. The people who did push back, believe it or not, Dr. Sharon, were the people who were so focused on test scores, because ultimately they're saying, if you're doubling recess from 20 minutes to 40 minutes, then you can't rob Peter to pay Paul. So where's that time coming from, that extra 20 minutes a day, if you're not going to extend the day? And my response was, recess is an extension of the classroom. That 20 extra minutes they have outside, for them to move, for them to have all these divergent thinking opportunities, to connect, to physically move around. I didn't know how important it was, to be honest with you, until I shadowed students. So one thing I do every year is I shadow a student in every grade level, from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, for the whole day. And I recommend that to every superintendent, to every principal that's facilitating or stewarding or moving a building forward or serving kids. Because when you shadow one student for the whole day in one grade level, you have a snapshot and window into what they're doing. When I taught 20 years ago, it's totally different than what we do now. So when I went outside, and I said this in the TED Talk, and I went outside for recess when we had it for 20 minutes, you go outside, you divide teams up, you go play for 5 minutes, and the whistle's blown, and kids are like, you've got to be kidding me, we have to go back inside. And they're angry, and they don't expend energy. And then they go back inside, and they're not on task. They're still thinking, their brains are still outside. The research is out there. I don't care what college you look at, what research study you look at. Students who move throughout the day, by far, there is a significant, and I mean significant, correlation between not only behaviors decreasing, but academic achievement increasing. And the paradox of less is more in the classroom. So for those of you who are worried about, if we take away 20 minutes in the classroom every single day, that equates to 100 minutes in a week. You multiply that by 40 weeks, and people are going to say, well, you're missing all this time in the classroom. But the funny thing is, those kids that come back and they expend that energy, and just as important for males as it is for females, they are ready to rock and roll. And that, to me, is the blessing. If you look at any of the countries, we love to compare how the United States does to other countries around the world. We're 23rd in math, we're 27th in language, we're 28th in science. But if you look at the top 5 countries as far as where they score in the PISA scores, for the most part, their kids are moving almost all day long. And we don't model that for some reason. And we chose to. And we have an increase of attendance in our schools now since we implemented this. Almost half of our discipline referrals have gone down, so they've decreased. So automatically, right away, we're starting to see some of the benefits as far as behaviors we want kids in school, more importantly, happy kids in school, and then kids doing things that they should be doing, which is paying attention and enjoying school once again. So.
Wow. And you, so much so that you call it the 4th R.
It is.
Yes. And I love that. I love that. And so I just think it's really phenomenal. How large is your school district? How many schools? How many?
Sure. Well, it's interesting. So for New York standards, we have over 726 school districts in New York State.
Wow.
Some schools range from 50 kids, and I mean school districts, to well over the city schools. New York City is over 1 million. But on Long Island, we have over 126 school districts. I'm one of the largest ones, believe it or not, at 8,000 students, 11 buildings.
Wow.
So we have 1 high school, 3 middle schools, 7 elementary schools. And for Long Island standards, that's a pretty big school district. But if you go, if you go North Carolina, certainly in other states, they have county school districts. We don't have that in New York State. We have these little bitty pieces. And we have 5 large school districts in the state. We have Rochester, Buffalo, the big city schools. We have New York City. But that's about it. Then we have a lot of suburban schools and a lot of rural schools in New York State.
Wow, very interesting. So moving on with your piece, let's now talk a little bit about emotional growth and I want to read a quote from you. You say, a strong emotional basis is the groundwork for the academics that will follow.
Yes.
So, and here we're talking about really creating healthy relationships. Talk to me about how your school district is really trying to emphasize emotional growth.
Sure. Well, let me start with this, because for anybody who understands executive functioning skills, decision-making skills, and I'll use this concrete example. So I drove to work today. I commute about 10 minutes. Someone cuts me off. I have a solar flare in my car. I'm like, oh, I can't believe somebody did this to me. But I have tools in my tool belt to bring me back. And for that to not wreck my day, or to wreck the next hour, or to really just emotionally hijack me to make decisions that I would regret later on. We have students here, and I know we have students all across this great nation of the United States that don't have these skill sets, as far as they get emotionally hijacked and then they lose instructional time throughout the day. Coupled with emotional intelligence, which is by far a much better predictor of future success than IQ, as far as I'm concerned, because those relational skills, working with others, knowing how to collaborate, knowing when to kick it into 5th gear, to kick it back to 1st gear, all those different skill sets to work in the workplace, or those soft skills, are really, really important. And 2 things that we've done is we've implemented yoga within our school districts, which is amazing. So K through 8, we have over 5,000 students monthly who are exposed to these grounding practices of breathing, of recalibrating, of grounding themselves, to give them tools starting in pre-K and kindergarten. And they have this year after year after year that allows themselves to take that inner journey. Because if you are grounded and you are in a good place headspace-wise, then you are at an optimal way to learn. You are ready to rock and roll, to learn things that are new and different. But if you're emotionally hijacked, you're lucky if you can form a sentence or make a sound decision because you're so upset. So we have taken all the research of mindfulness and yoga, and we've moved it through in our schools, and you couple that with recess, where students have that sacred time of being with their friends, making those decisions, and adults not hovering over them. And what we've seen blossom now are independent children who are making really good decisions. And ultimately, that's what we want in and outside of the classroom. And for some reason or another, I cannot understand why more school districts don't do this.
Exactly. It's fascinating. I'm telling you. And for those educators who are out here listening, whether you're listening or viewing live, or you're going to catch the replay, I just implore you to go and Google Dr. Michael J. Hynes and read his work. He has numerous articles, many videos on this very topic, and it is fascinating. It really is. And so I want to move on to, of course, academic growth, which is where the majority of the school districts and schools have their focus. But you believe that this is really like a formula, that you need the physical growth plus the emotional growth and the academic growth coupled with the social growth. And so it's more a combination of it. Whereas most school districts, most schools, the whole focus is academics. I think I was really I was either viewing one of your videos or reading an article, and you talked about how the kitchen sets have been taken away.
Yeah.
You're preparing 5-year-olds for college versus them really getting learning how to share, learning how to get along with each other. And so I just think your work is fascinating. So let's talk about the academic growth. And this is something I didn't know, that New York has actually adopted the next generation learning standards over the Common Core standard. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's still in draft form. The new standards, I mean, as far as them being rolled out, they're going to be phased in over the next X amount of years. There's a lot of pushback in New York State. As you know, from a federal standpoint, students in grades 3 through 8 have to be tested in ELA and math. And with that, there was a lot of parents who chose to opt out of those tests. So the Common Core, for the most part, had left a lot of people with a bad taste in their mouth. State Ed realized they needed to do something about the Common Core standards. So over the past year and a half, 2 years, I won't say they've rebranded them, but they've recalibrated in some way new standards, and now they're moving forward. The good thing about the new standards, especially at the elementary level, is that the word play actually shows up, which is really amazing. Never happened before in any of the standards, any of the iterations before. So I think the state is recognizing they need to move in a different direction, but it's still based on 2 outcomes, as you said before, math scores and language scores, and they're forgetting about everything else. The thing that I want most of the viewers, or hopefully all the viewers, to understand is when students take a test, a standardized test, it's convergent thinking, meaning that there's one problem and there's one answer. And I don't know about you, but in real life, that is not really the case where you have one problem and one answer. Usually, it's divergent thinking where you have one situation and there are multiple ways that you can attack it. So there's a great study. I want to bore you with the details, but I'll give you the quick down and dirty about it. There's this great book called Breakpoint and Beyond. Divergent thinking skills is by far one of the most important things that companies are looking for right now, because they want to see people who can tackle things from multiple perspectives. So divergent thinking, an example would be, here's a paperclip. Give me 50 different ways you can use this paperclip. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. When the study took place, over 25 years ago, 1,500 kindergartners were tested for divergent thinking skills. Now think about this. 98% of them scored at the genius level. 98% at the genius level. That same cohort, 5 years later, were retested again for divergent thinking skills. It went down to 32%. Those same kids. 5 years later, it went down to less than 10%. And then they actually administered the same test to 25-year-olds, over 25,000 25-year-olds, and it was less than 3%. So if you think about that, companies are looking for people who can think outside of the box, who can really tackle things from multiple perspectives. Schools are not doing that. They are producing really just people who could, here's one problem, here's an answer, and then can't actually explain how they came up with that answer. That's what state tests do. That's what standardized tests do. That's why recess is so important, because all they're doing outside for 40 minutes is thinking of different ways to attack certain things that are in their way. And that's why yoga, when you're in a good place, or mindfulness, you're in a good place, you're predisposed to making those divergent thinking opportunities. So what we have to do in class, in our schools, in my estimation, is provide more of those opportunities. But we're pushing against a very, very big system that doesn't allow for that to happen. Could that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Just fascinating, I'm telling you. And so the last one is social growth, and that is talking about getting along, the collaboration. Let's get together, teamwork. Social growth is socializing is extremely important. And so I just want to know a little bit about the efforts of the schools, the particular schools, because my whole focus is leadership development. How are you grooming those next in line to still have this same mindset? Because you're building a culture in your school district is what you're doing.
Yes.
Around that. How do you ensure that your leaders, because, the groundwork is at the schools.
Sure.
How are you ensuring that you have leaders that are grasping the P's?
great. It's a really, that's the $1 million question, right? So, whatever organization you are in or that you are stewarding, how do you get people on the bus, as Jim Collins would say, without running them over? And how do you move your vision, your idea, your core values forward? When for the most part, you're not going to get 100% buy-in just because of people's biases or assumptions or whatever they're thinking, or it just won't align. So we have over 40 something administrators in my school district. I would be silly to think that all 40 are like, can't wait to do this. It's just not happening. So there are certain things that you have to do. If certain people don't buy into what you're doing, my job is to make sure, and we've done this over the past couple of years, I find them employment somewhere else. Because if this is not jiving with what we're doing here, let's find a place that does jive with your core values. The second thing is you empower people who have never been empowered before. That is probably one of the most important things. John Kotter talks about in one of his books about how our iceberg is melting, right? So he has all these different steps that an organization can go through. His first step is you create a sense of urgency. You create a sense of urgency, and my urgency was: is what we are doing or what we are doing right now, is it actually working? And the answer is no, it's not working. So what can we do? Something that's new and different. And what you do is you bring people on board, you empower them, you trust their judgment, and you check in with them often. I'm not a micromanager. I don't like to micromanage because I trust people and their professionalism, but I'm very hands-on. And I think what great leaders do is, Deming would say this all the time, you need to be at the ground level and see what's happening. So if you're in a school system, I start my day every single day in the school. Every single day I started. So before I come to the office, I have 11 schools. I'm stopping at one of them. And I'm not stopping there as a deficit model, gotcha model. It's let's see what's going on. And people talk to me, and I'm hoping they're telling me the truth. I think they are. They're letting me know what's working, what's not working. And I talk to the students. I talk to them all the time. I talk to the teachers. I have something called Caffeine with Mike. Once a week, I have open office hours, no appointment necessary. It's like confession. You come in, you tell me what's going on. What can I do to solve that problem? Because being transparent and having an open office, I think, leads to better communication. And then the last thing I think that's really important is that you have, the Energizer Bunny, right, with the drum, and you beat it. I beat my drum, double-sided drum, as far as what we're doing here. What is the vision of the district? What is the mission of the district? And what can I do to empower you to move that vision and mission forward? And I have to be honest with you, it's really not rocket science, but the rocket science is making sure you invest your time and energy in a way that's laser-like focused. And it's into people, because this is a people business that we're in. And the more that you're connected to people, I think the more prone they are to accepting, or at least taking the horse blinders off to your ideas and at least trying them. Because it's all about trust, and it's all about making sure that we're on the same page. Because you can do that, I think, in an honorable way. And even if we disagree philosophically about certain things, the bottom line is I'm still going to try to make sure that you get what you need and deserve to help our kids. And I really believe that formula works. The P's formula, there isn't one component that's more important than the other. There's no hierarchy, as I've said before. It's not academics and then social, emotional, physical growth is a second, third, and fourth. They are all number ones. And you have to strike that balance. And that's the hardest thing to do, is to strike that balance in this day and age of where we are with public education, because it's getting bashed left and right. Wow. 90% of our kids in this nation are actually schooled in public schools. 90% of our kids. That's a lot of kids. But there are a lot of public schools, I believe, that can do a much better job. And the way to do that is to strike a balance. We have systems within our body, right? So if one of our systems within our body is out of whack and is not functioning well, we feel it, we get sick. If I take too much vitamin B12, if I take too much vitamin C, it's a poison, it's a toxin. It's the same thing with academics. If all we do is focus on academics, we are poisoning our school system because we're not striking that balance.
Wow.
That's what we're trying to do.
That's I tell you, that's impactful. So tell me, Dr. Hynes, how does someone who is graduates at the bottom 10%, barely graduates from high school, in your words, How does someone like that become superintendent of schools?
That's a great question. I guess the short answer would be I never want another child to experience what I experienced in school. Because here's what most schools do. They believe in a bell curve. They believe there's an even distribution of smart kids to kids who truly struggle. And then I call the rest of the kids in the bell, 80% of the kids, they're caught in purgatory, right? They're stuck in purgatory. They're not quite here. They're not quite there. And we don't honor most of those kids. They fall through the cracks in the system. I was one of those kids. I don't think I was top 10, top 20, but I certainly was bottom 10, bottom 20. And so for me, if I had that one teacher, that one person, if they took the time to at least say, Mike, come here, let's try something. I see that you have some strengths in this area. Let me see what we can do. We don't do that enough with kids. And so what led me to be where I am right now as a former elementary teacher, former principal, 2 different levels, assistant super, now superintendent, it's that drive to make sure that all kids get what they need and deserve. And I'm hoping any administrator who is listening right now is doing the same thing, because that's what we're here to do.
Wow. And my professional work, I work with novice leaders, first and second year assistant principals, first and second year principals. And so all of my learning, all of my knowledge is always for them. Everything I do, I try to grasp that knowledge so that I can help foster their development.
Sure.
So coming from you, this established superintendent that's doing awesome work, what would be your message to those novice leaders who probably at some point want to move up the level, assistant principal to principal and principal to some other level in the education system? What would be your advice or your message to them?
Sure. I was just having this conversation earlier today. Homeostasis is a wonderful place to be. I equate it to lukewarm water. It's very inviting, and once you're in this lukewarm water of being comfortable, it's very, very hard to get out, because when you get out of lukewarm water, it's very cold and it's uncomfortable. So my advice is to always stretch yourself, always try things that are new and different, to continue to take risks. I can't believe how many people that I meet that are so risk adverse to trying and failing. They equate failure to being a failure, where if you try something new and different and you fail, that's when you learn the most. I probably failed at 15 things before the end of today. But the trick is to learn from each time that you make a mistake and do that. And you, not you, but whoever's listening, as an aspiring leader or first or second year, I tell you, they have to try to learn something new every single day and try something new and different every day. Because the day that you become homeostatic and you're stuck in that lukewarm water, you better retire or you better get out. Because if you're not growing, your kids are not growing. And that is the big T truth as far as I'm concerned. And so we try to create an environment here where I'm telling my principals all the time, I want you to try stuff that you've never tried before, as long as it's legal, of course, but I want you to try things that if you think it's going to benefit kids, you don't need my permission to do it. You're a big boy, you're a big girl, you can do it. And then if you do it and it works, congratulations, share that knowledge with other people. And if it doesn't work, share that knowledge with other people, because that's how we grow as a team, as a system. But we have been so conditioned to not test drive things. And Thomas Edison, anybody else who invented things, Bill Gates, I'm not a big fan of Bill Gates, but anybody that comes up with something new and different, they have tried millions of things and they failed. But failure, believe it or not, we have to be open to that, especially as administrators.
Absolutely. And where can they follow you on your professional networks?
Oh, gosh. I have 2 Twitter handles. I can pull them. I don't even know them, actually. I mean, I do tweet a lot, though, I have to say, and I do my own tweets. It's a way to share information. And then I have, on Facebook, I have something, Dr. Michael Hynes, Children Are More Than Test Scores. I have my own Facebook page. And what I do is I send out weekly, probably 10 or 15 pieces of either research or information that people might find interesting. My next push is against AP tests and this love affair with kids taking 8, 10, 12 AP tests before they graduate. They're graduating with 30 college credits before they even enter college, and they're skipping lunch, and they're not balanced before they go to high school. That's the next push, and that's a lot of the information I'm putting out there right now on that particular Facebook page. It's not my fight, but my concern about what David Coleman's doing with College Board and this machine that they have of making people believe if you don't take enough AP tests that you're not going to get into a good college. And that to me is just it's just simply not true at all. And we have kids who are more anxious and more depressed than ever before, and we need to right that ship.
Wow. I'm just so humbled, and I'm so excited that you accepted the invitation to come on here. I just believe that as educators that we have to continue to learn, and you have to learn from out of your comfort zone. That's one of the things that I advocate, that we have to reach out and find out what other people are doing. Hear the good stuff, because there is definitely good stuff across this country in school districts, and someone needs to let it be known. And so I'm so excited that you accepted that, so that you can tell your story and let them know all the wonderful things that are going on Long Island. And I'm excited because I do believe I'm going to meet you one day.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sharon. I'd love to meet you too one day.
Absolutely.
Please keep doing what you're doing, because this is a wonderful vehicle for leaders to voice their thoughts. And so thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I know you had a long day, so I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Absolutely. And guys, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Leadership Matters. I'm so excited that you joined us. So thank you. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week.